Hey Mustangs, in this video we're going to take a look at the digestive system and its parts. Now in order to complete this, there's a handout on the notes page of the class website. You can print that out. It would be a lot easier to complete this YouTube lesson. And you're going to turn to page 175 and title it Digestive System Parts, and then you'll glue that page into page 175. Alright, let's go ahead and get started here, looking at the different parts of the digestive system. Alright, first the function. The function of the digestive system. Every body system has its function, its job that keeps the body going, keeps the body working, keeps the body at homeostasis. In the case of the digestive system, we're looking at breaking apart your food into molecules, so that way you can use those molecules to build your body, to maintain your body. Okay, so the definition that we see here is break down your food into molecules small enough for your body to absorb and use. Alright, so here's a picture that shows all the different parts of the digestive system. Some of these parts are ones that food actually passes through, while others are parts that your food never really passes through, but they create enzymes or other materials that are used in the breakdown of food. Alright, so let's start. We're going to go from top to bottom. So where food enters down to where food is going to exit. So the first thing is going to be the mouth. The mouth is all about mechanical digestion. Mechanical digestion means the physical tearing apart of food. So if you have, let's say, like a paper here, okay, I can tear this paper. I haven't really changed the chemical composition. I didn't break chemical bonds, but I have physically changed it. Okay, so I'm physically changing. That's what my mechanical digestion is. So your mouth starts breaking your food down into smaller pieces in general. Not breaking chemical bonds yet, but breaking it into smaller pieces of food. Okay, your mouth has three main parts: the saliva, which is your spit, the teeth, which do the tearing and the cutting, and then the tongue. Next time you eat, pay attention to what your tongue does. Your tongue positions the food within your mouth. Okay, so your tongue is constantly pushing your food between your teeth, so that way you can actually tear apart the food. Now, the mouth has enzymes in it, and this is also where the chemical breakdown of food begins. It has amylase, which is a type of enzyme which is used to break apart carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are usually sugars. If you eat a really complex carb, it doesn't taste sweet at all. But if you left that complex carb in your mouth long enough, the amylase enzymes would break it down into smaller pieces, which would be the simple sugars, and it would actually taste sweet. So like pastas and stuff don't taste sweet, but if you were able to leave it in your mouth long enough, you would get a sweet flavor out of it as the amylase broke it down into smaller pieces. Alright. We saw this part also as part of the respiratory system. This is the pharynx. This is the back of the throat right here. It's right above the split where you basically have two tubes. The front tube that you feel here, which is the trachea, and then there's a tube behind it, which is the esophagus. Trachea leads to the lungs. The esophagus leads down to the stomach. So the pharynx is just simply the back of the throat that you would feel right here. All right, and the pharynx is going to guide food towards the esophagus. The esophagus is a long muscular tube. It goes from the pharynx all the way down into the stomach, okay? And the pharynx basically squeezes food down into your stomach. Your food does not fall down into your stomach by the use of gravity. It is actually squeezed down. Picture like a tube of toothpaste, and how if you start on one end, how you squeeze, and then you squeeze, and that moves the toothpaste closer and closer to the other end. Okay, that's basically how your esophagus works. Okay, and the name of that movement, that squeezing of the esophagus as it pushes your food down, you can see in this picture here, the muscle squeezes, it's going to pinch it downward, then this will squeeze and pinch it downward. It just keeps pushing it downward. That's called peristalsis. Okay, and you don't have to think about it. Every single time you swallow, you don't have to think about what your esophagus is doing to push down the rest of the way. It's automatically happening. Alright, the stomach. Now the stomach usually gets all the credit, and usually when people think of the digestive system, they're thinking of the stomach. But we're going to see that there's actually another part of the digestive system that is actually the true, what I like to call the hero of the digestive system. So here looking at the stomach, your stomach does mechanical digestion. It kind of churns like a washing machine, and that helps break food down into smaller physical pieces. It also produces hydrochloric acid, which is going to help weaken the bonds within your food. And it also has pepsin enzymes. Oh, I thought it was going to click back on that. Pepsin enzymes, which are used to break apart proteins. Apologize, it's not filled in there. So it's used to break down proteins. So this is a type of enzyme that starts breaking the bonds in proteins. Because if you remember, all 4 macromolecules, okay, they're large molecules made by connecting smaller pieces together. And it's the job of your digestive system to break them back into those individual pieces. So pepsin breaks apart proteins into amino acids. All right. The liver is an organ that your food never passes through, but your liver is important because it makes an important substance known as bile. Okay? Now, bile is used to help separate lipids. If you didn't create bile, your lipids would chunk and clump together. Because if you remember, lipids, they don't line up, they don't form covalent bonds together, but they love to huddle together. So bile prevents your lipids from the foods that you're eating from doing that inside your body. And that'd be really nasty. They just start all clumping together. So bile prevents that. So liver is the one that makes the bile. The gallbladder, all it does is simply store the bile. So the liver makes it, sends it to the gallbladder, and it's going to store the bile inside there until it needs to be released when you eat food. The pancreas is not only a gland, so we saw this as part of the endocrine system. The pancreas is also part of the digestive system here. So here, the pancreas is going to release different things to help neutralize the stomach acids. So when food drops from your stomach into the next part where food's going to drop into, which is the small intestines, the pancreas creates sodium bicarbonate, which it drops in there at the same time the food is dropping in, and that creates the acid, or stops the acid from being acidic. It neutralizes it. Okay? The pancreas also is important because it creates most of the enzyme used to break apart your macromolecules. So it creates amylases, proteases, lipases, and nucleases. And if you look at each of these different types of enzymes here, proteases break down proteins, lipases break down lipids, nucleases break down nucleotides, and then your amylases are going to break apart your carbohydrates. Okay, so it creates all the enzymes you need to break apart all your macromolecules back down into their individual monomers. And it drops these into the small intestines there so your food can finish being digested and absorbed. Okay? So the small intestine, like I said earlier, most people think of the stomach as being like the main part of the digestive system, but it's really the small intestine that is the real hero of the digestive system. The small intestine is where all the chemicals get dropped in, all the enzymes get dropped in to actually fully digest, fully break apart your food down into its monomers again. This is also the part of your digestive system where the nutrients get absorbed. So nutrients get absorbed into your blood. Up to this point, even though food's inside your body, it's not usable yet. It hasn't been absorbed into your blood. It's not until the small intestines that they absorb all these monomers into the bloodstream and then distribute them out to all of the cells. Okay? Now here on this part, it says inside each villi are capillaries to absorb and transfer amino acids, monosaccharides, and nucleotides. There's also lymph vessels that absorb fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, so we're going to see the small intestine. It's not smooth on the inside. It basically has these little finger-like projections, which I'll show you in just a moment, that are used to help absorb all these monomers. Okay. Interesting facts down here at the bottom. You don't really have to write this down. Your small intestine is about 21 feet long, and plus these villi increase surface area. So long digestive system, or long small intestine, so that way you can absorb as much nutrients as you can. Now you might be thinking, wait, how come the small intestine is so big and it's called the small intestine? It has to do with its diameter. The small intestine has a small diameter compared to the large intestine, which has a larger diameter. So it's not about the size, it's about the diameter. So small versus large. Okay, so here's a example of the villi here. So if you look at the small intestine, if you took a piece of it and you cut it open, you laid it open like this, you would see these finger-like projections here. Those are called the villi. And inside each of the villi are blood vessels and lymph vessels, and they are basically diffusion is going to happen. the nutrients from your food are going to diffuse into these capillaries and these lymph vessels and then be carried out and distributed to all the cells. Here's a close-up image of villi. So again, if you had the small intestine open up like this and you're looking straight down, down at it, you would see these are the villi, the finger-like projections. All right, the last body part here is the large intestine. This is the last thing that your food passes through. And basically the main function of the large intestine is to absorb water. So as the food, anything remaining that wasn't absorbed in the small intestine, some of it can be absorbed here, but it's really the water that gets absorbed here, and some nutrients. So if you have a problem with your large intestine and it's not absorbing enough water, you might notice the result is diarrhea. Okay, so diarrhea, you don't absorb enough water in the large intestine, so that water leaves with the feces. And that's how you know something's wrong with your large intestine. Opposite of that would be if your large intestine is absorbing too much water, and then you might be constipated and really dry feces as a result. All right, so that's the end of this section. We'll move on to the next section in the next video.